Okay, so different ways that you can muscle test. Maybe you guys have seen somebody else muscle testing on somebody else. And the way that that looks is the person, so let's say we're asking questions about, what's my name? I would stand up and I would put my arm out, and somebody else would put their hands just about where my wrist is, and they would push down. Okay. And depending on how far my arm drops would be a strong or a weak response. Now, that one is a little bit trickier to do because it relies on two different people to do it. One, you have to get the person you're testing on to not resist, but resist a little bit when you're pushing. Because when you're pushing down, you don't want to push and then they just drop their arm. You need that constant, so that constant pressure where they're pushing up against you, but at the same time, they're not fighting you so you can't move it. So that one is a little bit trickier. And the person who's doing the testing, they need to know what they're doing to be able to put that pressure on and know what a stop feels like. Because otherwise you'll just keep pushing right through it if you're pushing too hard. So that's one way to do it. Again, that one is a little tricky. I don't recommend you guys doing that one right away. But, I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about it, because I'm sure, as you talk about muscle testing or look at other videos about muscle testing, you'll probably see that. Or if you go to a holistic practitioner of some sort, they may use that method. I know chiropractors sometimes will have you lay down and you'll put your arm in the air and they'll push that way. It's all the same thing, whether you're standing or you're laying down, okay? And like I said, that one's not my favorite. If you're really good at it and you practice it a lot, then yes, you can muscle test other people. But for you guys just starting out, I wouldn't recommend starting with that one. Okay, so that's the 2-person method. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can muscle test just using your hands. Okay. Some people prefer to make 2 different rings with their pointer finger and their thumb, and they interlock them together. Okay. And what they do is they pull them apart. And if one of the rings breaks and you're able to pull them apart, then that is a negative. If it stays strong and you can't pull them apart, then that is a strong or a positive or a yes response. Okay. So positive, yes, strong response, negative, no, a weak response. Okay. Another method that some people like to use is they'll take their 2 fingers, their middle finger and their pointer finger, and put it down with their thumb. They'll take their pointer finger of their other hand and slide it into the hole, and they will just pull it through. So that is a strong response where it does not break, it does not go through. That is a weak response where it goes all the way through. You can also do it with just 1 finger too, either way. So strong, weak, strong, weak. Now, what happens if you kind of barely break? Ooh, is that a strong or a weak response? Well, in my experience, this is a sort of. Okay. So let's say, let me give you an example. Let's say you're standing in the kitchen and you're like, oh man, I want something. I really, really want something. And I don't know what snack I want. We're just going back to an example that I know you guys can all relate with. And so you're standing there and you're like, okay, my body wants something. Does it want something, in the pantry? Okay, well, that was a no. In the refrigerator? Sort of. Okay, well, it's sort of in the refrigerator. Now, when I was talking about the refrigerator, I was thinking the fridge part, not the freezer part. So it's sort of in the fridge, but that's kind of what I was thinking. So my body's like, well, you're on the right track, but that's not the exact answer. So if I test, is it something that's in the freezer? Yes, it is. Okay, now I'm actually really curious because I didn't know my body wanted something right now. Let's find out. Is it ice cream? No, of course it's not ice cream. Okay, it's one of the proteins in there. Yeah, it is. Okay, and I'm not going to dive into all the different proteins that I have in my freezer. So that's what my body is wanting, and it's wanting, oh, I already know what it is. It popped into my head. Nuts. Nuts. See, that was a sort of almonds. Ooh, it wasn't almonds. Cashews. Yeah. So there we go. Nuts popped into my head. So when you're testing, again, this is a sort of that's the right answer. Okay. Now, my personal favorite way to muscle test is taking my thumb and my pinky finger and putting them together. So I just kind of like you're putting 3 fingers up, right? Doing, 3, count to 3. Except instead of hooking my finger on there, I just rest it. You see how I did that? They're just kind of barely pushed together. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pointer finger and my thumb on my other hand, and I'm going to slide it right inside. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be opening and closing this hand. Okay. And if I can pull it apart, it's a weak response. And if I pull and it stays, it's a strong response. Now, you can also get a sort of response with this one too. And that's where, for me, it like keeps touching over and over where it wants to stay. You see that? Where it wants to stay hooked, but it doesn't quite. And it's not strong, but it's not weak. It's just kind of somewhere in the middle. So for me, and for a lot of people that I teach, that is the easiest way to muscle test if you're just going to use your hands. It's the pinky to the thumb and the pointer finger, put it in, and then test what it is that you're wanting to know. So let's see. My body is wanting fruit right now. Nope. It's wanting a vegetable. Nope. Something in the kitchen. You see how it's a little bit of a sort of. Oh, I need water. Yes. Okay, well that was a sort of, because I have my water bottle sitting upstairs, what I normally drink out of throughout the day. So while there is water in the kitchen, my water bottle that I drink all day long is upstairs. So hence the sort of, okay? Now, if something pops into your head, muscle test it. Why not? Because that's a good way to practice listening to yourself, because you don't have to muscle test to know what your body is always needing. Because the more you talk to yourself, I know, sounds crazy, but the more you talk to yourself and the more you build that relationship with you listening to your body, the more you'll have these thoughts pop into your head and you're like, oh, I bet that's it. And you test, yep, that was it. Kind of like with the nuts. I'm like, yep, my body needed nuts. I already knew that. That's why when I tested it, I just assumed it was almonds because I love almonds, but it wasn't. And then same with the water. My body needs water, and I can feel that in my mouth too. After I tested it, I'm like, oh yeah, yep, my mouth's a little dry. I need to get a drink. Okay, so those are a couple different ways that you can test using 2 hands. Now, there's one more method I want to teach you about, and it's using 1 hand. This one is a little tricky. I'm not gonna lie. I still struggle with this one sometimes. You take your 2 fingers, okay? And your middle finger goes on top of your pointer finger. And while pushing up, you're gonna push down at the same time. So this finger pushes up, this finger pushes down. And if it's a strong response, it'll stay on there. If it's a weak response, they'll split. Okay. This is one that I do if I'm driving and something pops into my head and I pull up to a stoplight and I don't want to take both hands off the wheel. So I just kind of sit there and I'm like, okay, is it this, no, this? Oh, okay, that's what it is. And then light turns green and I keep driving. Hands still on the wheel. This one takes a lot of practice. This is the one that I really encourage anybody who wants to use muscle testing within their job or their career. I have a lot of counselors. I have a lot of therapists. Actually, I have some nurses too, and a doctor that's what they use, so that when they're looking at a chart or when they're taking notes about their patient or whoever they're working with, they can muscle test what it is that they need to either ask their client or their patient, or they can muscle test, where they need to lead the conversation, maybe what is this patient's body needing, that type of thing. And they can do it discreetly behind the paper and the client can't see it. But if you're standing there going like this, the client can see it. And so that's one that I really encourage. If you're going to be using this in front of a client and they didn't come see you specifically for muscle testing or for energy work, this is the one that I recommend that you really hone in and learn how to do once you build up your confidence with this weight testing. Okay? All right. So let's go find out what kind of questions we can ask, because you can't ask all of them.